It's just the two of us, Moxie old boy.
It is indeed.
Two stallions in the studio. But we're here for a very special reason today, brother.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm heartbroken. Connor's not here for this momentous occasion, but This is a big one today. Conor, shouts out Conor Good. Right, we're missing you, brother. But unfortunately, it's probably for the best. And I don't want to say it because I wouldn't want to spoil what we're about to talk about for Conor. That is true. I feel like he needs to experience this for himself before he gets involved in this conversation. He needs his cherry popped well and truly. Raw, you know what I'm saying? Before he goes in there. Well, look, the thing is now, if Conor sat by here and we're talking all things spoilers, because this is a spoiler review, just to get that out there. Let's get this out there right now. If you have not seen the film and you don't want to know what's going to happen in the film, click off. Don't be go and watch it. Don't let us ruin it for you, because we are going to be talking about pure spoilers from this point going forward. Isn't that right, Moxie? We are indeed, because I don't know how to explain myself without explaining the spoilers too. I feel like this film in particular, though, if you don't talk spoilers, like, you're going to be missing a lot. It's a minefield, frankly. Yeah. I mean, and I am well known to trip up. That's fact. And we're probably going to miss out or accidentally spoil something. Like, we'd be like, oh, we're not going to do that. And then I accidentally trip up saying something. But let's get on with it, shall we? So, we were lucky enough. We have officially seen Spider-Man No Way Home. I've seen it twice now. No, so we did. So me and Tom, on the first day, it was out in the UK, like proper fanboys. We went there. Wednesday night. It was brilliant. It was really good, right? First of all, that's what I want. Let's start with that then, Tom. What are your first impressions and taking? Because this film, we've talked about it on the pod before, it's been so hyped up. Like, it's probably one of the most anticipated films, maybe of all time. I think say so. Well, stretch, yeah, right? I'd say so. So what's your first impressions? What was your, right, so if you were just, your initial first impressions taken from the cinema, where are you with this film? Right, before I say anything, I'd like to say I'm glad I've seen it. Yeah. I am glad I've seen it. Very glad I've seen it, in fact. Would I see it again anytime soon? Probably not. That's interesting, actually, see, because like I said, I've already seen this movie twice, and I do feel like I still got problems. Now, I've still got problems with the film. We're going to get into all of that, don't you worry. But I do feel like a lot of the problems that I had from my first watching, genuinely, I didn't find as bad in the second time. Maybe it's because, obviously, I was expecting and I was anticipating what was coming. Really? Because they feel like they'd be exacerbated. What does that mean? To be honest. Well, exaggerated? Yeah. Ah, yeah. Basically the same thing. Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, no, well, fair. No, I thought the same thing. But, like, maybe because I was so high-key expecting them, I didn't have a lot of problems. But to me, as somebody who's grown up with Spider-Man, right now, this has been my childhood coming through. This was, like you said it when we left the cinemas, fan service to a T. And it literally is. There's nothing else. If there's anything at all, this film is just to satisfy people who have loved this character or films or whatever. Even if you haven't, I suppose. Yeah, and like I was going to say, I'm glad I've seen it, definitely. I wouldn't see it much again anytime soon because I didn't think it was a great film. But it was very fan servicey, and there's genuinely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. If you want to go to the cinema and the filmmakers want to put out a film which sole purpose is to give fans what they've wanted to see for a while, whether it is good for the film or good for the franchise or not, then why not? Because, you know, like Matthew said on the Christmas episode, we all need a little good stuff in our lives at the moment. That's true. And, you know, it was good to see them back. And I feel like they embraced that fully, didn't they, right? I don't feel like they tried to hide away from what they were trying to do. I think the objective of this film, if anything else, was, because even the way it ended, which we're going to get into in a little bit, was purely to satisfy Spider-Man fans. And I think they achieved that. No, I'll give it credit in the fact that it didn't want to just lean on the nostalgia. It did want to create the story around the actual nostalgia was coming in. It was Peter Parker's film. Not Peter Parker. Tom Holland's film. Yeah. For sure. Which is a good thing, I think. They built an entire narrative around it. It does stand on its own 2 feet. So to say it is literally just fan service is probably being a bit harsh. Even though fan service isn't a bad thing. Yeah. Like I said. But it didn't do it very well. Right. Is my only problem with it. Well, we're going to get into all of those reasons as to why you feel like that in just a bit. But let's start off with this thing, because we've touched on it briefly. All of the speculation, all of the rumors, all of the leaks, everything that's came across, they're back. Big Tobey, Big Andrew, they were indeed in this film, man. Right, I'm going to go to you first, because I have my own feelings about this. What did you think? They're back. What's your initial thing of that? Did they handle it well? Well,
I'm genuinely ecstatic. I genuinely am. There is nothing that is wrong with the film that would get in the way of me enjoying the fact that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire are back as Spider-Man. Genuinely, when I saw Tobey, especially, because, you know what, I haven't really watched the Andrew ones too much.
Yeah.
I've watched them a few times. But the Tobey Maguire ones, they are my childhood.
Literally.
I used to have all the action figures. I had Venom, Black Spider-Man. I had them all, but it was great. So when I saw him come through that portal, no matter how they did it, I would have gone nuts. And inside me, I was like, wow, I'm so happy.
It's just such a warm feeling, right?
It is a relief.
And do you know what was...
And it's just nice to see.
And what was crazy about the way they sort of did it? I've been in some cinemas where they react before, but I feel like compared to American cinemas, British cinemas are very much more low-key. You don't really get a lot of audience like muttering and talking.
No.
The audience we were in actually did light up. Like, everyone literally, physically, you heard them all react. So the first portal, obviously, when Andrew Garfield came through. I'm sort of opposite to you. I've grown up with Tobey's Spider-Man. But man, to me, Andrew Garfield is my favorite Spider-Man. Not his films. His films aren't great. I completely understand that. But to me, as a character, he's the best version of Spider-Man we've seen.
Well, I tend to agree with that because he genuinely plays it so well. He plays it so young.
He's such
you
a good
believe
actor,
it.
man.
You believe him very well. He plays it very empathetically. You know, he's vulnerable, but also quite confident when he puts on the spider suit.
That's the thing.
So, no, he is a very good Spider-Man, don't get me wrong. The films he was in, questionable.
For him himself.
But then, you know, the first films are slightly questionable.
Yeah, but that's the thing as well. Like, what was so really... Because obviously there's this bit in the back of your mind when you're going into this film, like, are they actually in it? Because even though we've seen the leaks, even though we've heard everything, there is that slight question, like, man, like, imagine they're not. Because in every... Because obviously he's been promoting Tick, Tick, Boom, and he's been getting bombarded with questions about Spider-Man. And there's something in you like, is he being honest? Maybe he's not actually in the film. So it's almost like a relief when they open that portal... And then he comes through and whips his mask off. The crowd were crazy. Everyone was like, wow, it actually has happened. And I just thought, like, they handled his very, very well. I was so happy to see him. It was so nice to see Tobey, but I felt like his entrance wasn't quite as pungent as Garfield's, if you know what I mean.
Pungent.
Is that the word?
No.
Like impactful.
I
suppose, impactful as I thought, like, maybe it's because we knew he was coming because Andrew was there, right? And, you know, whoever's going to come next is going to be Tobey. But still, like you said, man, there's not a bit of your body that's not, like, thrilled when you've seen them. Like, yo, this is crazy. They're all actually back.
Like I said, the way they handled it is almost immaterial. I mean, they could have literally just shat them out on the screen. I would have been like, wow, I'm so happy right now. It is. So the way they did it didn't really, like, affect me at all in the way I felt or... you know, thought about the scene. The fact that they were there just completely blew my mind. And I was like, you know what? I'm happy now. I can die a happy man.
I've seen them all. And do you know what? They were in the movie for a nice bit of time.
They were.
It would have been very easy.
It would have been rubbish if they just, like, came in, did a few lines, and left.
But at the same time, like you said, it was a Tom Holland film. If they came in and dominated the movie or dominated the second half of the film, you would have almost felt a little bit like, all right.
No,
you know,
that is one thing the filmmakers did do very well. They maneuvered around having all these new people in that are very important to the franchise and could potentially drown Tom Holland's importance.
Yeah.
And they maneuvered around that in a very good way and kept it and the main focus and the main drama on Tom Holland and actually paid him his dues.
Yeah.
Like, gave him the respect he deserved, gave him a full story within the film. And that was well done.
Yeah. And to me, it's definitely Tom Holland's best performance as Peter Parker, too.
He was surprisingly good, actually, because I've seen him in a few things, and I'm not too convinced.
No.
And I've seen him in the other Spider-Mans. I'm not too convinced. But in this film, he showed a lot of good acting range.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I'm not an actor, but...
Well, we'll get into performances in just a little bit, because I feel like there's a lot of standout performances in this movie. And we'll even talk about the performances of Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, too. But first of all, that was our reaction. That was like the boys coming in. Just pure excitement and joy, right? There's no way you're never going to enjoy that coming in. So I want to go.
I got a little tingle in my belly. That's all I can say.
Do you notice how they kept referring to the Spidey sense as the tingle now?
I know. I think I developed one in the cinema.
I liked it though. I think that's a reference to the Tom Holland's movies. They call it the tingle.
I developed my very own Spidey sense when those two Spider-Men came through the portal.
Literally,
it was that big an experience for me.
It was unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? Like that was probably.
I've been bitten by the bug
of Spider-Man,
yeah,
bro. But that's the thing. I was genuinely filled with happiness. Like when Andrew Garfield came in, I was just like, oh my god, because he's so good in the role, and I was just like, this is all I wanted. And then Tobey came in, and you're like, you knew he was coming. But it's still so like, oh my god, this is actually happening. You know what I mean?
I know.
Insane.
It was cathartic. It was, and that's a pretty heavy word to use for it. But yeah, it was quite cathartic.
I like that.
Just like, you know what? This is something I've really wanted to see. I never thought I would see.
Yeah, right.
But you know, it's there, and you know, it's a historic occasion.
And you can see why the reception to that is so good.
Yeah, of course I can.
You know?
But yeah, we could gush about that one moment for like hours on end.
Right, so let's move on then. Let's go into like the plot and the storyline. So this movie starts out exactly where we left off with the last film. The world now knows Peter Parker's identity. Jake Gyllenhaal has registered his identity, Peter Parker's identity to the world. And we're picking up literally immediately after the second film finished, I think. Like literally it is immediately after, right?
I can't remember the end of the second film.
Yeah, because it finished with that same shot, I believe. So we're picking up exactly afterwards, and I just thought that they genuinely, that carried the story. The first bit, obviously, I'd say third of the film, is Peter sort of now dealing with the fact that the world knows his identity, how it's affecting his family. They sort of try to change it into a bit of like, we can't get into college sort of vibe. Sort of, you know, a bit of cliche, but...
Well, what I got from that opening was they needed a reason for him to actually try and open the multiverse.
Yeah.
So what I'd imagine is they were given the idea of, get all these Spider-Men in the film.
Yeah.
However you do it, that's fine.
Yeah.
So they just came up with the sort of, you know what, he wants to get in college, everyone knows he's Spider-Man. There we are. So it feels like it was worked within a sort of studio framework rather than the actual writers and the director, actually taking the choice. Unless, of course, he had ownership over the entire trilogy. I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I agree with you. It always felt like, it was and it was done well, but it doesn't really feel like a film for that first section. It feels like just going from scene to scene to scene to scene. Things are happening, but they seem to be getting quickly resolved. I wasn't a massively fan about how that was done. I can understand what they were trying to do, but I just feel like that first 40 minutes of the movie was a little bit too like, okay, we need to get here, so let's get through these points to get there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it was sort of like made up like soap drama sort of stuff to give the characters a reason to be somewhere. And that's fine, that happens a lot. But it was very rushed through, and it was an unbelievably ropey beginning.
Yeah.
Like, do not get me wrong. Some of the like dialogue,
awful.
The jokes, like I've said before, I'm worried about the Marvel jokes because I don't particularly find them too funny. And I thought they were gonna like completely ruin the entire film. And in the first hour,
easy
maybe.
This is a long movie, 2.5 hours, right?
It was genuinely painful to watch.
Yeah,
because it wasn't realistic in any way.
No.
And now I know he's a Spider-Man, right? I get that, but you want your characters to be realistic, and Spider-Man's acting like a dumbass when he's supposed to be a brilliant scientist.
Yeah.
You've got him running around making weird-ass jokes that no one in the cinema found particularly funny.
No one.
You got Doctor Strange making weird-ass jokes that no one found funny.
Yeah.
You've got Zendaya doing all that hand shit that he does all through the film.
Yeah.
Like she's on Disney Channel again.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just doesn't feel true to life in any way.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It doesn't feel... People don't communicate in the way they're communicating in the first section.
No, exactly. They don't communicate how normal people would communicate. You know what I mean?
And the thing is, like, I remember there's people behind us in the cinemas, and about 40 minutes into the movie, they genuinely did say, this is so cringy. Because the way it's delivered, it almost does feel... It feels like you say, it feels like, right, we know we've got a big save, so we're just going to rush through this set. And it just doesn't feel authentic at all. Like you said, it's a superhero movie. You're not expecting it to be anything too special.
And again, it's kind of like, we need the reason for the multiverse to open, so we'll have Peter Parker be an absolute idiot to ruin the spell.
I will say, look, what I think they did quite well is that they are able to draw back to empathizing with Tom Holland's Peter, because his decisions, as stupid as they seem a lot of the time, you do almost say, right, they're trying to attack him from he's a very empathetic person's sort of perspective.
Yes,
but at the same time,
it doesn't particularly come off very empathetic when he's doing unbelievably stupid stuff that you know the character wouldn't do anyway.
Well, when he goes to Doctor Strange,
it's just writing it's just writing because you need to get somewhere.
That's the thing. And that's the thing. When he goes to Strange and he's like, oh, do this, and he's just coming in, oh, can you do this? Can you do this? And Strange is like, okay, I can do this, I can do that. But then he just keeps going. You're almost like, are you dumb? Like, why would you keep doing this? You know, common sense is telling you don't do this, and it just keeps plotting. And it's almost frustrating to see, right?
And there's also other stuff. I mean, just in the way he talks to, like, May, Happy, MJ, like, in the start, like, the way they talk, the stuff they do.
Yeah.
It's just unrealistic, now genuinely. And like I said, I'm not a guy who's lived through a life of a Spider-Man, right? Yeah. I don't know what he'd be like. But I know for a fact people don't talk like that.
Exactly.
People don't talk in, like, quips at each other.
No, you're right.
They just don't. And whoever would talk in, like, quips at me the entire time, I wouldn't be friends with them.
No.
I don't want them on my screen, frankly.
Literally. And don't get me wrong, I really like this film. And we're not trying to be negative, but this, we both agreed, probably to me was the most frustrating part of the film. The first hour, just the general communication between characters. I think to me that was my biggest problem. Yeah. From there then, so yeah, I completely agree with you. So from there then, the dialogue and everything, and then they go and he sort of breaks the multiverse, if you will, and we've got sort of all of these sections.
We'll go from the point where he's broken the multiverse.
So now we're starting getting introduced to old, and also means we're on the point actually when Doctor Strange says you didn't even call the college, and then he's like, no, I didn't think to do that, and I'm just like, man, that's quite.
To be fair, that's a mistake I might end up making.
Yeah, I suppose. I see. Maybe
shit.
I'm being a bit harsh.
It's like, oh god, maybe I should have called him.
But then, now let's be real. As soon as the villains started coming in, the film did take a bit of a different direction. Also, before we move on from this opening section, shout out Daredevil, Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, I believe his name is, made an appearance.
You had to point out who that was.
Yeah, you've not seen the series, right? Man, that series is so
I mean,
good.
I could have guessed because I know who Daredevil is.
Yeah.
I am aware of him, and he did look very Daredevil.
Well, he's fantastic in that series. That series is a really good series. Yeah? Daredevil on Netflix, bro. It's fantastic. But I think they did that well. They didn't overdo it. They didn't do it it was literally about a minute he's in that movie, right? Very subtle cameo, very short role, but it's very clear that Daredevil is now present in this universe. I thought that was well done. So, shouts out Marvel and Sony for that, because that was pretty good. But then, like you say, so the multiverse is broken. We've got all of our sort of main foes from the last 20 years of Spider-Man coming into these movies. Starting off with Doc Ock, then we see Green Goblin. We've got Jamie Foxx's Electro. We've got Sandman. We've got Reese Ifans' Lizard. Like, they're all back. Personally, I was very, very scared because you were very worried as well about Doc Ock coming into this movie and them sort of ruining what Spider-Man 2 did with him, Alfred Molina, because...
And not him specifically, but the others too.
Yeah, you're right.
But he's just like...
Exactly.
An example.
And we'll talk about performances later, but I was happy. I think they handled it pretty well. I sort of see where they're coming from. They're coming from the moments before they died, so they don't necessarily remember their exchanges with Spider-Man, I suppose. I liked it. Look, I was very happy. I was expecting it. They sort of handled it exactly like I suppose I expected them to handle it when they came in. But it was quite cool, man. It was quite cool seeing all of your old favorite villains come back. Some fantastic performances, which we'll talk about too soon. But graphically, I think it was pretty solid in that section. The little bridge scene, the fight scenes, I thought that was all pretty solid CGI work. Yeah. I do have some problems with the CGI, which I'll get onto later.
No, the fight scene, I'll have to break this down slightly. When Doc Ock arrives, that fight scene and like everything about it, very good, unbelievably good. I really enjoyed it. There is like a slight problem with the amount of CGI they use.
Yeah, it's reliant now, right?
It doesn't, like, Doc Ock doesn't have as much heft or like weight to him as you'd imagine he would. He kind of flies about.
Yeah,
and it kind of like doesn't quite look physically real. But then, it's always going to be difficult to actually do it. But that fight scene itself, I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good introduction for him. I thought it was a good introduction for the Green Goblin. I didn't necessarily mind that they cut away as soon as the Green Goblin comes.
Yeah, that's true.
I didn't necessarily mind that. But this is where I had problems. When they were all locked up, from that point, the jokes continued, and they were terrible.
Yeah, they really were.
Some were okay, but a lot of them were terrible. The Lizard was already there, bless him. He had nothing to do, almost the entire thing. You had Doc Ock locked up. I can't remember the exact exchanges and stuff.
Yeah.
but it just wasn't particularly good. It wasn't particularly entertaining to me.
Yeah.
Then he goes out, fights Electro in what is possibly one of my least favourite fights in a Spider-Man film. It was good seeing Jamie Foxx back, don't get me wrong.
Shout out.
And fair play, he came with some charisma in this one.
They did a lot better with his character, right?
Like, he was very smooth in this one.
Yeah. I almost don't understand how he had that change in transition, but you accept it because you're like, this is just such a better take on the character.
Well, he's just very charismatic, to be honest. But then Sandman turns up, and he looks...
It sounded like he was reading off a book, right?
Yeah, and he looks exactly how I'd expect. Like, he's picking up a paycheck. And they gave him a script and said, read it.
And he said, okay.
And he said, fine, I will do that.
Do you need to rehearse it? Nah. Let's go.
Yeah, that was a slightly disappointing fight. Some of the performances of the villains were a bit hit or miss.
Well, we'll get into performances in just a second. Sticking with plot a second, though, that was one thing that when I watched it the second time, I had a lot less problem with, was when they got arrested the first time. I was very much like, oh, this dialogue's not working. And I still don't think it's 100%.
And it's not all a dialogue thing.
No, it's not. But I was almost just like, all right, I can see what you're doing here. The reason you're exchanging this is to let the audience who maybe hasn't studied the last 20-odd years of Spider-Man know how you are here, what relevance you have to any particular universe. Yeah. And it's forced, it's in your face, but I feel like maybe that's necessary. You know what I mean? Maybe it could have been done a bit better, but...
I also feel it's very clunky. In the sort of ways that, like, exposition is never necessary. You can do it by visually doing, like, saying, you don't even really need to say where they came from.
Yeah.
You can leave that up to the fans who have seen it to know where they came from, their journey.
Yeah.
And the new fans to find out. But I suppose you needed to give them all a bit of airtime. But it seemed like they didn't know what to do with a lot of them.
Yeah.
Sandman, they didn't really know what to do with.
Same with the Lizard, right?
Lizard, they did. I mean, when they went to Maze, he literally just stayed in the car.
Yeah, and then broke out. It's like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. No, and that was a weird line, like, so it begins or something.
Yeah,
it was something like that.
And so yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so they were all stuck it. It felt a bit like they were padding stuff out. It went on for far too long, especially with all the Doctor Strange stuff in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Like, that fight scene went on for a while.
Well, that's one of that was a bit... Now, CG, I can imagine... Now, graphically, that was fantastic.
It's impressive.
Very impressive. Not really that necessary.
It's what I go for a Doctor Strange film for.
Exactly.
Or an Inception, see.
That's the it was very Inception vibe, right?
Yeah.
It's very... But that's... I mean, I've not got a problem. Yeah, it was okay. It was fine. You know, I didn't have a problem with it, but it just felt very long and almost like...
If
the full objective of that, right, is to get Doctor Strange trapped in this... geometry equation reality visual thing, and it's just like it looked very good, but man, that was long. That felt long.
Yeah, the reason I feel they did it as well, slightly to set up a Doctor Strange film, which never great, but it felt like a bit of a roadblock and not a particularly entertaining one.
Yeah,
because it wasn't quite, say, pulled off. They didn't quite pull it off in an entertaining way. Well, but I did like where the story went from that.
Yeah.
Because I like the route that they went with the Green Goblin where, you know what, I want to actually save these characters.
Yeah.
Like, I like the route, because that's something very Spider-Man.
Yeah, and you believe him.
It's something Spider-Man would do. I want to save these characters, make them better people, and I'm going to find a way to do that. So I like where it ended up going.
Yeah. That's the next sort of plot movement, I suppose, of the movie.
This is really where it picked up for me, in the middle.
Because obviously you have it where he actually has managed to save Doc Ock. He's got them to the flat. He's managed to almost like revitalize Otto Octavius' sort of control over his arms.
And that was good to see.
And then William Dafoe just takes a life of his own in this film and just completely gives one of the best villain performances I have seen in a comic book film.
It was
oh
brief,
my gosh,
but it was unbelievably good.
It was the way he did that, and you can almost see because Jamie Foxx's Electro almost just sort of goes with the flow because you can tell he doesn't want to be restrained by that electric thing anyway, right? And then as soon as he gets that motive from the Goblin, he just kicks off, and it worked. It worked so well because you know he's in control. Norman Osborn is by the Goblin. And he takes it over so well, and then it just goes on a life of its own. That movie does.
Because that's the thing, you can see it coming. Goblin's
see, I didn't. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. So I kind of assumed that maybe the Lizard, because there's that scene
where it's almost like you're focusing on Peter and he's trying to figure out what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And I'm generally watching like is he focusing on because Norman's being so nice right now, and he wasn't doing anything suspect to that point, and then Peter figures it out, and you're like, oh shit, here we go.
Well, that's the thing, but I don't even feel like you seen it coming like hinders it at all, because it is such a good moment anyway, and you're like, well, you know it's coming, but it's gonna be mad.
And that fight scene is very good.
Yeah, with Electro, he's a bit like, oh, I don't really want to do this. I don't really want to be like all this power taken from me. And then you're like, oh, right, shit's about to go down. Then you're like, it's probably going to be Green Goblin out them all.
Yeah.
Because Doc Ock's already been saved. Sandman's the only one in there who's genuinely nice anyway.
Yeah, but he was a bit weird. His transition was a bit strange.
Yeah,
right?
well, he's nice anyway.
Yeah.
Or should be. And you're like, okay, well, it's going to go down. And honestly, it's one of the best scenes in a movie I've seen this year. Yeah. Like, by a long shot. The way it was shot was very good.
Yeah, going through the walls and everything.
No, the atmosphere, like they made the lighting in it as well. It was genuinely amazing. The atmosphere they like drummed up, half because of the performance of William Dafoe, because he is amazing. Two, just the way it's shot, the cinematography.
Yeah.
But yeah, the vibe it created, and you were like, oh my god, and it is about to go down.
And it certainly does, and it perfectly sets up the full May's death scene, because obviously following this exchange is where they all sort of go crazy. We have a I think, in my opinion, probably the best fight scene of the movie between Peter and William Dafoe.
Yeah, probably.
You know where Peter's literally punching him in the face, and you can see William Dafoe is just staying square, psychopathically laughing, just taking the punches, and you're like, oh my god, this guy is crazy. And then after that, it almost sets up really nicely the death of May. She gives the most iconic line in Spider-Man's franchise, a version of it with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, that was the only blot on the scene.
Did you? I thought I liked it. I liked that a lot. I was like,
well, you didn't need to say it.
You didn't, but if you didn't say it, you would have felt like it was almost a missed opportunity, right? It's almost like when Cap said Avengers Assemble. He's never teased that, and then as soon as he says it, it's like, right, fan service, give me mine, it's out there.
Yeah, but for me, again, it's the fan service getting in the way of the film. Like, they're saying it because they feel like they have to, but it takes you out of the scene, which is an unbelievably good scene. It's an amazing scene.
It is a very good scene.
And then she comes with the Uncle Ben line of, with great power comes great responsibility. And you're like, oh, well, there's the line. Wonderful. And that's the end of that.
And then she does.
Luckily, it was at the end of the scene and not halfway through.
They did that death very well, though, right? Because almost like, obviously, the glider hits her. He looks so sinister when he throws the pumpkin bomb, but Peter manages to dodge it away. But they both get up. She delivers the line. They both get up, and you almost think, oh, okay, she's okay. Almost typical Marvel. Like, there's not really any stakes. But then all of a sudden, it's like, yo, I've got to catch my breath. I've got to sit down. I'm tired or whatever. Yeah. And then she dies. You're like, oh shit! Like they did it. Whether they needed to kill her or not, I don't know. But to me, it worked very well.
Oh, it's the absolute best scene in a movie
by far
this year.
Now, people do say that they almost killed her just to drive plot. I don't personally see it that way. I thought,
well, at the end of the day, isn't that why anyone kills anyone in a film?
That's the thing.
It's the character development of Peter, one, also to drive the plot, too. I mean, I can't really think of any other reason why you would kill anyone off.
Yeah. And you know what? It worked well. And it really, really set up nicely the mind state and the atmosphere. And there's a beautiful shot afterwards. We've seen it in the trailers where Peter's just standing, staring at the hologram, or not hologram, the board of J. Jonah Jameson, like ripping into him after he's genuinely just lost Aunt May in his arms. And you're like, damn, like this guy's going through it right now.
It was, for me, the most emotional scene in the film.
Oh, by far.
Yeah, it was just very well done. Tom Holland was very good in that scene as well.
He did very well in that scene. He handled it really well. You can see his expressions literally changing.
I'm like, well, you've got to, when William Dafoe's giving a performance like that, you've kind of got to step up.
To match it.
And it set up the film very well going forward.
Well, from there is where we have, I suppose, the biggest reveal of this movie, where...
Indeed.
Who would have thought Ned, of all characters, and I've got a few problems with Ned myself, but we'll talk about that later. Who would have thought of all characters he would set up one of the most iconic things in cinematic history? When he's whittling his hand like Doctor Strange, and he's obviously in the room, she's about to press the button. You know she's not going to actually press the button. But then all of a sudden, we get the reveal of the two Spider-Men. How did you find that full scene went down? I know we talked about our excitement towards the scene, But that actual scene where they're exchanging, they have the little bit of a web off. Andrew's like wiping the cobwebs off the corner of the room. How did you feel about that?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved the scene in general, but I was always going to.
Yeah.
The way they introduced Andrew was great.
Yeah.
The little wave.
Beautiful, right?
Run over. Yeah. Even the way they introduced Tobey. It's just unbelievably very Tobey Maguire, really.
Literally.
Not even Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man at this point, just very Tobey Maguire.
Exactly.
If I was looking at the scene, probably, and it's hard to differentiate it from the moment that it is, but if I was looking at the scene as a scene, I'd probably say I wouldn't enjoy it.
But because of who you're introducing,
yeah, there was some of the jokes were okay, but it was like, again, it was like made an entire like hoorah over nothing really. And then, like I said, there's Zendaya doing a weird fucking. It's very Disney Channel.
Yeah,
because she does like the sort of, and she does it about 20 times. I'm like, what? Do it once or twice, yeah. It can be comedic.
I feel
but doing
like
it like 20 times.
I see. Yeah, I do feel like though, no matter what problems I could have with the technical delivery of that scene, I'm never not gonna love that.
Oh
scene.
no, like I said,
You know
there's
what
not.
I mean?
And like, who was it? Is it May's house they're in? Or
No, they're in Ned's house, I believe. Ned's.
MJ's house. It's Ned's house.
I believe it's Ned's house. Yeah, it's his grandma's or something. I might be wrong.
Well, his grandma being there, cool.
Yeah,
there was some funny, but I don't know why it was necessary.
Yeah. And that little exchange between when Andrew goes on the roof, and then you have the little web exchange with Tobey and Andrew. Bro, I just feel like that was just, like you said, you can list all of the problems you could have with that scene. It's never
like I
gonna
said,
be cool.
They could have done anything with that scene, and I would have been like, it's a good scene.
Well, I feel like that almost stands for what follows them, because obviously then they go to meet Peter on top of the school. And that reveal is so good, where MJ says, there's some people here to see you, and the camera pans up, and you just see both the Spider-Men stuck to the wall, and you're like, you know they're there. But it's just like, oh my God, this is happening. And then they have that sort of emotional exchange where they sort of, I suppose, reminding us of their plots in a way, I suppose, would you say, in comparison to where Peter is right now?
Yeah, I suppose. But they were bringing up their experiences in order to help the character of Tom Holland Spider-Man, which does also work within the film's parameters. If you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so they were bringing up their past, not in a way to like have exposition or anything to tell everyone who they are. They're not doing it for that. It was actually brought up for a reason, which, you know, it works.
Yeah, you're right.
So they brought up their past, like Uncle Ben, Gwen, all that, to help the new character, the new Spider-Man, get through something.
Of course,
and it works within the film, so it's good.
And then following that, we have the scene of the lab, where they sort of recreate the meme, right? And we see all three. And what I liked about this scene, like I said, I'm a big Andrew fan. I like how they remembered the empathy of the characters like Tobey and Andrew from previous Spider-Man movies. You can see when MJ and Peter, Tom Holland's Peter, are sort of having a bit of a hug, Andrew can genuinely feel that emotion, and then you can see Tobey react to Andrew's emotion and remind us of how his relationship isn't perfect, but he's getting there in the end. I thought that was quite nice how they tied all of that in. They have that bit of a comic little thing to see at the end where they're like, who's Peter? And they all look at each other. Peter Parker, yep, say the same thing. Like I said, one of those scenes that's never not going to work. You know what I mean?
No, they were very respectful of the characters. Like, you can tell it was made with amazing amount of love for the old films, the old characters, all that sort of stuff. They brought up a load of stuff to, like I said, help each other get through stuff. And that's what you want to see from a Spider-Man film, really.
Yeah, exactly right.
It's like, if the Spider-Man are going to meet, you'd want them to be, like, helping each other, helping others.
Exactly.
You know, having that positive outlook on life.
Yeah. And they did that.
And the jokes improved at this point. I don't know whether it was who was delivering those jokes, in the fact that it was Andrew Garfield. It was the three Spider-Men. Yeah,
well, I will get, we're going to get, like we said, we will touch on performances, but I feel like Andrew Garfield genuinely helped boost those comical exchanges so much.
And you could tell in the cinema as well we were in. Because at the start, there were a few chuckles at some of the jokes. A few. But when the Spider-Men were all, like, joking around, having a good time, there were actual laughs. Like, there were a solid amount of laughs.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, I do think it went on for too long, especially because it bled into the other scene.
I love that scene.
It did go on for too long.
Did you not love that scene where he was like, "Can you click my back? Who have you fought before?" And he's like, "I've only fought a guy in a rhinoceros suit." Oh, yeah. I loved all of that, man.
No, it's good because like it's very nostalgic,
but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah,
you can be okay with it. It's fine. And I understand why so many people are like, you know what? I don't care. Best film ever.
Yeah.
I completely agree. If that's what you think.
Yeah, you can see where
that's what you think. And I get why you think that.
Whether you think that or no, I see.
But like I said, nothing wrong with those two scenes. I just feel like they went on a bit long.
That's
like
fair
the jokes were better. But, you know, it could have been cut a bit shorter. Especially knowing that there's barely any fight scene in it.
Yeah, the fight scene at the end is pretty strange, right?
Or fight scene of any real word.
That's right. Because obviously then you have your big, I suppose obviously the stuff in between that. We have a few more exchanges where he says, "I love you guys, Andrew." I loved all of that stuff, man. Like to me, the fan service to me was just outweighed any other problem that I could have with that.
And that's what I mean. Who am I to say like, you can't enjoy this because it's not like the best made film in the world?
Exactly right.
Like I said, who cares what I think, frankly? And who cares whether it's the best film ever made? If you think it's the best film ever made,
good on you.
Good on you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I know for a fact there are going to be people out there, absolutely, all they've ever wanted is to see the three Spider-Men together. It's amazing.
Well, we'll move past this last bit to get to the main big change in the plot then nice and fast so we can get onto some performances and standout moments. But we sort of have the big sort of final fight scene, if you will. Gets pretty wrapped up. Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, comes back in, explodes the sort of time restraint box, whatever it's called, which sort of is controlling the multiverse. Big exchange. Peter goes to kill the Goblin at the end, of which Tobey Maguire shouts out Tobey, stops him from doing. There's a few standout moments.
My guy.
Does indeed. Now, there's a few standout moments I know we've missed. We will get into those, I promise. But just to get through to the main plot. And then Peter makes the sacrifice at the end of the movie to conclude everything. Everybody's got to forget about who he was. And then he literally, to finish the movie, he is completely on his own. He is living in his own apartment. He's making his own suit, his own tech. He is a Spider-Man where nobody knows him, and he's lost everybody. He only has himself to defend on. How do you find that?
Well, it's a very interesting route for them to take to end the film, because it is basically like the last trilogy was an origin story for Spider-Man in a way.
Yeah.
Like, without doing the actual origin, they've managed to do a trilogy of origin stories for the future Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, I've seen somebody say he went from the MCU Spider-Man, who was mini Tony Stark in a sense, to Spider-Man through these three films in a way that they've got another trilogy confirmed.
Yeah.
We now have a very independent, very unknown Spider-Man who we've seen a part of the Avengers, we've seen as this character, but now going back to the roots of why many people love this character.
Yeah.
Very interesting, man. Very cool that they did that.
And the trajectory they do in is quite clever and quite well done.
Yeah.
The ending itself, like, I find it interesting where they're going and that they're going to, like, do a whole new Spider-Man after this now, sort of. Did the emotional part hit with me as much? No. But then that's maybe because I've only watched the Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home maybe twice each, 3 times each.
So you've not,
And we've only really had one film between MJ and Peter Parker before this one, right?
Well, they only really got together at the end. She's in them both. She gets introduced at MJ at the end. We don't know she's MJ until the end of Homecoming.
Yeah.
And then they quote unquote getting together at the end of Far From Home. So we've literally had a film, you know?
Yeah, right. So, and from what I got in this film, I can't remember what I felt about it before, but from what I got in this film, I didn't particularly enjoy the relationship in this film.
No?
Just because I found them so irritating at the start.
Fair enough.
That's the main time they have together, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I can see where you're coming from.
So when it came to the end and it was like, feel emotional, I'm like, yeah, well, I can see why you would be. But it just didn't work for me because I haven't got the investment in that relationship as much. And also, don't know for the life of me why he just didn't stay there. Because where are they going to go? He could literally just explain what has just happened.
I think that's the full point. So he doesn't want to drag them back into the idea.
Well, that wasn't that at the moment. I get that afterwards where... Because there was a moment in the coffee shop where he saw her cut. And he was going to read her the thing. And he kind of went... you know what, no.
Yeah.
And I read that, it might not be true at all, but I read that as if, you know what, he doesn't want to bring her into this life of danger.
Yeah.
Especially knowing what Andrew Garfield Spider-Man went through.
Yeah.
Because he would have told him. He doesn't want to bring her into that, or at least that's the vibe I got at that moment. But when it first happened, that wasn't the vibe.
I see what you mean. I mean, I can see why you would mistake that, but I suppose I sort of looked at it as, right, he's seen now the damage that the full film in a way, although it's not maybe as empathetically done as you imagine, is they're trying to push the idea that by knowing Peter Parker, their futures are in jeopardy, in a sense, and they're sacrificed, and they don't care, they love him, but it's almost like by knowing him is a bit of a bane in the sense, like, right, they are going to have to lose and miss out, but then he sees at the end of the movie, they've got into this college, he reminded of the cut on his head, he's like, man, I'm only causing you this, I'm going to go on my own, I want you to go and achieve what you're going to achieve, and I thought, man, I like that, that's pretty nice. And you feel sorry for Peter, right? He's generally completely on his own at the end of the movie then. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And there was a bunch of stuff about the spell I didn't quite.
Yeah, the plot holes in that spell were pretty.
Yeah, but what I take from that is the spell thing might make sense completely, but the fact that I'm thinking so deeply about it, I was in the film. I wasn't quite in the film. I was more thinking about, well, if that is like that, then why is it not like that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So instead of being in the film at that point, I was just thinking, well, why is it not? Yeah,
I get that. No,
which is never brilliant in a film.
I mean, I feel like I'm once again like the good stuff of this movie, or quite similar to a few other movies, almost like allows you to give a bit of a we'll let him off with that, almost in a sense that it feels like there is clearly a bit of a don't worry about it. It's not that deep, and I think that's partially to do with what we're going to move on to now is the performances by some of the actors in this film. So sticking with. Let's go back to the villains first of all. Actually, let's go to the villains now. What was your standout performances by the villains? I think I know what you're going to say, but what are you thinking of those villain performances as a whole?
Well, I mean, I feel like it's only between 3, really. Let's be realistic, because, I mean, they didn't give Lizard or Sandman much chance to flex their acting muscles, really, because they didn't they didn't give them much to work with.
No.
So really, it's between Jamie Foxx's Electro, Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, and William Dafoe's Green Goblin. And as good as Jamie Foxx is, like as charismatic as he is, I'd probably say he was my least favorite out of them all.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
But maybe it's because I have more attachment to the other two. Then I'd say Alfred Molina,
who was solid. I thought
who was good, very good. Second, and then just by far, William Dafoe as Green Goblin.
Well, I think that might even top his performance in Spider-Man 1 as Green Goblin. I really do, because I just...
Oh, yeah, I'd say so as well.
It was fantastic. He genuinely had that sinister... It was almost quite Joker-esque, man. Like, in a sense of, like, he genuinely seemed, like, when he was the Goblin, an absolute psychopath. You know what I mean? Like, an absolute guy who was genuinely so twisted in the brain that you genuinely think, this guy is genuinely so sinister. He's doing this because he enjoys it. And that shouts out to William...
much, but he is, like, a bona fide thespian sort of thing.
Yeah, you're right. And the thing is, was so good. They took his mask off him in this movie, right? And I feel like that gave William Dafoe so much more to play with. It gave him so much more room to really express that character in ways that obviously when he had the big Goblin suit on in Spider-Man 1, he just couldn't do. And I think it paid off so well, because his facial expressions genuinely make it it makes it literally 10 times better. Added to his amazing dialogue when he is the Goblin, the change from Norman Osborn's voice to the Goblin.
You could see they were making the Green Goblin the focal point of the villains, or the big bad, should you say.
And you're completely okay with that?
Yeah, you definitely are. It was just a brilliant performance. There's nothing really I can say. As much as I didn't want his mask to get broken, because I think it's a bloody good design mask.
Yeah, that's controversial. Not many people think that.
Yeah, and he looks really good. As much as I didn't want it, it worked out for the best.
It really did. And he was obviously more comic accurate with the way he was, like, physically, like his suit in it, obviously.
Yeah,
like hoodie type
it worked out for the best. So,
and, Alfred Molina also very solid. I liked it when he came back sort of to Otto Octavius, and I liked his performance as Otto. And it was very, very... He was one of the main... I think him and William Dafoe were probably the two characters who stuck very much to how their characters were set up in their first two movies. You know what I mean? Like, you just felt like they were the same character, whereas a lot of the other characters we'll get into in a second, like, Jamie Foxx's Electro is literally a completely different character. And that's the route they went with. You know why they did that. But he's a completely different character.
And his suit looked really cool.
It did. It looked a lot better than the blue, right?
Yeah, it looked very good.
It did.
They didn't utilize him much other than just some cool Jamie Foxx dialogue.
Yeah, you're right.
They didn't really utilize him as much there. But he looked really cool as well.
He looked really cool. And like you say, I feel like Rhys Evans and I don't know, what's the guy's name who plays Sandman? I don't know. I forgot, but I feel like they were maybe a little bit unlucky because I feel as though, because they're fantastic actors, but like they weren't really given much to play with other than the case of, right, we need villains from these movies. You know what I mean? The first 5 movies. So we got to get you guys in. We don't really know what to do with you, but we're going to have you here anyway.
And
maybe a bit
disappointing. It felt like that in the film, really.
Yeah.
Because I often think, like, if they'd spread the metaverse out, maybe they could have fleshed out a lot of these characters more. But then it takes a lot of time. But
and do you really want to spend time? Because I don't really have a lot of investment into those villains. Of all the villains there.
I do.
Do?
Sandman was great in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, and they sort of... Sandman was a bit weird, right?
Rhys Evans was kind of good too.
Rhys Evans is a very good actor. So he was very disappointed. Shout out to Welsh Rhys Evans.
Yeah.
I feel you, dog.
What about you, though? What was your...
Oh, mate, I genuinely...
top 3 out of the villains?
Well, I think you said the top 3. I didn't like the fact that Jamie Foxx had a complete different character to what he was. I didn't love his character in Amazing Spider-Man 2 at all. But I didn't like how him coming into this universe, it was just a complete different character. Now, I like the character, but it was never really explained how he went from a charismatic Jamie Foxx to a very strange, driven, you know, just by coming in. I liked his performance. I think it was a lot better. I didn't like how they didn't really explain what made him choose the change. Because everybody else was, you know, pretty much except for... I mean, you didn't really get a chance to see Rhys Evans and Sandman, but they were really very similarly driven.
You saw one shot of them at the end.
That's the thing, right? And that's the thing. So I think Jamie Foxx gave a fantastic performance, but I didn't really like how they just like, all right, we just changed it. And once again, it goes to that thing where you're like, all right, we'll let him off. We'll just accept it. You know, they did a blow. Alfred Molina, fantastic. You know, he did really well. Like you said, I feel as though it wasn't quite on the level of Spider-Man 2, but when he got transformed back to Otto Octavius, I thought that was fantastic. I just thought he delivered. You felt and you believed his character very, very nicely.
Yeah, and he is a warm character.
Right? And when he came in and sort of supported the Spider-Man, you were like, because it would have been a shame for him of all characters, I feel, to just, if they just used him as a root in evil, especially how Spider-Man 2 finished.
And that moment was really weird, where, because I know earlier in the film, Electro literally zapped Doc Ock out of the building. Then for some reason... After knowing he did that and also knowing that Doc Ock had turned good, he was like, yeah, Doc Ock's definitely here to help me over the Spider-Man in this situation. Like in the final fight.
Once again, a little thing you're like, that doesn't really work, but because of what the film is, you allow it. But like you said, man, William Dafoe in this movie, he tops his first performance by far. He is absolutely phenomenal. And I liked how hard his transitions between Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin were. You know, especially at the end when they inject him with the serum, that transition, and it's a different character, and you're like, man, like, he's showing that really, really clearly and really well. And like I said, I feel like such a little thing without the mask that made it 10 times better. It just because he allowed him to play so much more.
Well, you can see his facial expressions in big moments. Really.
Makes so much. So let's go from villains then. Let's go to the 3 Spider-Men. How did you find Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire's performances?
Well, it was the best I've ever seen Tom Holland for sure.
For sure, facts.
He did really well. I'm not even his biggest fan, but he did do really well.
Yeah.
In the moments he needed to, should we say. The mundane parts of the film, not as much, because I didn't like all the rubbish at the start and some of the stuff later on. But like in the big moments, he hit out the park, which, you know, you can only like congratulate him for. He did very well. Andrew Garfield just started... like picked up where he left off, really, didn't he? He did again. He's just a good Spider-Man.
Yeah, you're right.
Just the way he encapsulates the character. He even played him slightly older, very well.
Yeah.
Like he made the subtle changes, but he still kept the essence of the character.
He's a world-class actor, man. He really is.
He made like subtle changes, so he seemed more weathered, like older.
Yeah,
had been through a lot, but he still kept the like innocence, the sort of vulnerability of like the original Spider-Man, if you know what I mean, and also like the confident sort of quippy jokes. And they worked in The Amazing Spider-Man more. I think it's because they're so bombarded in the Marvel films all the time.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But yeah, he delivered his jokes well and just overall did really well.
Solid, yeah. What about the big dog? Bro, we were joking about this because we were genuinely saying, as nice as it is to see Tobey, and I'm never going to be disappointed with that full thing, he was literally Tobey Maguire in a Spider-Man costume as opposed to playing Peter Parker, I felt. I don't know about you.
It was something else. I loved it. I genuinely did.
Though,
But
right?
I always was good. I mean, he's my Spider-Man.
Yeah.
He always will be. So I'm always going to say it was great to see him. Did he look like he wanted to be there? No, he really didn't. But, you know, I mean, I can't blame him. It's a long time ago, isn't it? And he's like, you know,
I know what you're saying. And I feel like, you know, next to Andrew Garfield, who genuinely did seem to me like he was fully... It was almost like... Because he's had a lot of bad rap as Spider-Man, right? But he's a fantastic Spider-Man. Now, his movies haven't been great. And it almost felt as though he's like, right, I know that I've done okay. I know I can capture this character. I'm going to use it and elevate it on this platform. Whereas Tobey almost felt a little bit like... I'm Tobey Maguire. I am the OG Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's been there, he's done that. He's literally the iconic Spider-Man.
And no matter what he did, it was going to work, right?
Yeah.
But you did...
I don't even feel like it was all down to Tobey Maguire either. I feel like because he's such a meme...
yeah, right.
I feel like the filmmakers treated him more like a meme as well.
Yeah. And he didn't have as many standout moments as Andy. But maybe that's generally
but then
down
he
to, like,
doesn't need it. He's had his... fair dues.
Well, that's the thing, right? And you almost feel like there's a lot more to conclude with Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man than Tobey Maguire's.
Having said that, Spider-Man 4, Sam Raimi,
shouts out,
Kirsten Dunst, Tobey Maguire. Fuck it, bring James Franco back. I'm down for it.
Why not? Bro, I'd watch it. 100%.
Oh, for sure. I'd love to see it.
You know, and it was a solid before. You know, it was like you said, it didn't matter what he did. It was always going to work. It was never not going to work. Now, next to Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland, who Tom Holland gave his best performance, I'd argue Andrew Garfield may have given his best performance as Spider-Man too. Maybe. It's an argument. I don't know. But still, it's up there. It almost felt a little bit like, oh, damn, like this, he can't be asked, but it's still working because he's still here. You know what I'm saying? But overall, you know, solid performances from the Spider-Man.
Really well done.
And then also, just to quickly capture on the sort of the side characters, what did you think? I'm going to give you them all in one, just wrap your opinions up. On Zendaya's character of MJ, we had Ned, we had, say, Happy Hogan, and we had Aunt May. They're sort of the main characters that are coming to my mind. What did you think of those guys? Doctor Strange, yeah, Doctor Strange. But Benedict Cumberbatch's accent in this movie was really questionable. I'm not trying to say that I can do a great...
Tom Holland is a bit questionable.
Yeah, dude, right? But I just genuinely felt like, I was like, this is really wobbly right now. Some of the things he was saying, like Spider-Man, I was like, you can literally see you're trying to pronounce this word. Like, it's crazy. I've never noticed it before. Maybe it was just me, but...
That is a Brit talking. If any Americans would like to put their...
Do shout us up.
Yeah, put their opinion in the hat, then please do, because we don't really know what we're talking about when it comes to American accents. So... side characters. Well, I don't really like Zendaya's MJ.
No,
not really.
Fair enough.
Well, from what I saw in this one, anyway, she seems to but very Disney Channel, like very sort of teen Vogue.
I suppose that's where they're going with her, right? I think she's doing exactly what she's told. I feel.
Well, it's what they brought her in for, because I mean, I'd imagine. I don't think she did the Disney Channel thing beforehand, but yeah, it's just not for me because she's doing all these sort of like faces like
over the air. I know what you're saying.
And it's like, it's just not for me, to be honest.
Yeah.
Ned,
I don't like his character, man. I can't. And maybe it's because I'm comparing it to James Franco's Harry Osborn. But even, bro, I'm going to go as far as saying this. I might have even preferred Dane DeHaan's bro. Genuinely, I just don't. There's something about Ned that's just not authentic to me. It just feels so forced, and he just doesn't.
Yeah, and the fact that he's got Doctor Strange powers now,
it's crazy. But I mean, they're trying to introduce him as the Hobgoblin, though.
Oh,
right? You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but the man, it's just almost like, I don't know. Since the first movie, I've not been a fan of this character. And in this, it didn't change in this film. I just find him he's a very selfish best friend, right? Like everything he's sort of doing is for his own best interest, which is really, and it's only little, you can notice it when you go back in the past films.
I haven't
but
noticed it. I don't look that deep into
fair enough, but I just felt like, it's all he's very much, I don't know, I just don't like the character all that much, and I don't really like how he comes across. I'm not saying he's not a fantastic actor, I imagine he is, but the guy who plays him, but I don't know, there's something about that character that's not for me.
Yeah. No, I just don't find him too funny, and he seems like a comic relief character, so it doesn't really work for me. But what
about May, man? She was very good in this movie.
Yeah.
Who's the lady who plays Marissa Tomei?
I don't know. But she's the emotional crux of the film, and that is a big role. So, and she did do it very well.
Marissa, I think it is Marissa Tomei. Yeah.
Okay.
As an American actress, she's won an Academy Award. She got nominated for an Academy Award. But yeah, she was very well done.
No, I did like it.
I like her take on May though, man. I like especially if you're going off the two previous ones, like versions of May.
Yeah,
she's very good. It's very modern. It feels very authentic.
Different as well, and it does work in this universe as well.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Happy.
He's just always there, isn't he?
Yeah.
You never really feel that much from that character, right?
Has he been in this since Iron Man 2008?
I think so.
Jesus.
It's a long ass time. But if you're looking at it like that, Tobey's been in this since 2002, bro.
Yeah, that's true. Right?
All right, so Moxie then, let's move on to just I've got a couple of standout moments from the movie here. I'm going to ask you about them, and I'm going to get your take on them real quick.
It's a fast fire.
It might be fast fire, but if we go into a bit more conversation, that's absolutely fine. So let's go with the first standout moment of this movie, starting off with, you ready? May's death. I know we've already talked about it briefly, but how did you feel about that moment?
Well, unlike a lot of people, I'd imagine, like you said, I didn't feel like it was just for the plot. And even if it is just for the plot, then surely there's no other reason why you would kill a character.
I see what you're saying.
But I felt like it was big character development for Peter. It was done very well. It was in the best scene of the film.
Yeah.
It was done very well. It did hit emotionally, even though I don't have that much investment from the other films.
I agree.
It still hit quite emotionally.
Yeah.
Who did it as well? A1.
Yeah.
Like, really well done. Maybe they didn't have to have the fake out of her walking and then thinging.
Maybe, but I also kind of like that at the same time.
Yeah, but then that's nothing here or there. It's nothing really, isn't it?
I see what you mean.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the scene. I thought it was really good. She performed it very well.
Yeah.
Tom Holland performed it very well.
What more do you need?
And I feel like, especially if it is the plan to go where they're going, as in like Tom Holland Spider-Man doesn't want anything to do with MJ and that because he doesn't want them to get hurt, then that is the exact catalyst for that.
Yeah.
So it is a good...
It works, right?
Yeah, it works in the story, in the plot, in every way. So, yeah.
I completely agree with you there. Now we're going to move on to maybe... I think it is. It might be my favourite moment of the full film.
Really?
From a nostalgia value, when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man saves MJ. Now, I know we've both got a couple of issues with how it was done, but to me... that full scene, just looking back, because like I said, when Gwen died, I genuinely feel like that scene is one of the best scenes in any Spider-Man movie. The way it's done, the empathy you feel of him, because you feel the weight of that. You genuinely feel so bad. When you leave the cinema after The Amazing Spider-Man 2, no matter what you thought of the film, you genuinely feel like, oh my God, that was sad. You know what I mean? That was a real deep moment. And I think he acted in that and set that up really well. In this film, we were still reminded that still traumatizes him however many years on. And then Tobey, obviously, the bomb goes off, Zendaya falls, Tom Holland gets nailed by the Green Goblin. That looked like they hurt, man. A full-on glider to the rib.
Yeah, well, it would hurt, I'd imagine.
Dude, but
like me.
Literally.
Knows.
And then Andrew sweeps in, sees she's about to fall, saves her, gets redemption for what he... Not redemption, but he gets the chance to do what he wasn't able to do before with Gwen. And Andrew Garfield in that little... It's only 10 seconds at the end where he says, are you okay? And she's like, I'm okay. Are you okay? And you just see the emotion on his face. I was like, man... That was a very well taken opportunity. I would have been so disappointed if they didn't do that, because I low-key thought, man, this could be a missed opportunity if they don't. But I was so happy they did that. What do you think of that little moment right there?
Well, no, I agree with you. I thought it was a really good moment. They needed to do it, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a moment you can't pass up. Yeah, the emotion at the end was really good. I thought, he was very well acted by Andrew Garfield as well. You could feel that he was, he felt more content and like better about himself.
Yeah.
While also like emotional because of what happened.
Yeah.
My only issue is he literally swings down, catches her in a second, and they're on the floor within 2 seconds.
They should have drawn it out,
yeah, you would have liked to have made it a bit more dramatic. But
add
then
10 seconds onto that scene, and it's a different scene.
Yeah, but then a lot of moments had that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to come up on any of these in your thing, but apologies if you do. But like when Spider-Man and Sandman, so when Sandman is back to full-time Flint Marko, Spider-Man music hits. The 2002 Spider-Man music hits.
Which is so iconic, right?
Yeah, and you think, you know what? Tobey and Sandman are going to have a really, like, emotional...
warm discussion.
Yeah. Warm, like, emotional sort of moment with each other.
Just
because, you know what? Sandman wasn't a bad guy in the first place. They end up friends in the last one. It was... The moment at the end of Spider-Man 3 was more emotional than the one we had here.
Yeah.
And they literally just cut away from it like that.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I thought we were going to have an emotional moment between those two. I'm like, oh, well, you could have given us that.
You're right.
But literally just cut.
And it's exactly the same with Andrew Garfield with the Lizard, right? I know there's not emotion attached to that scene, but it's almost like, right, we've done that, next.
Yeah.
They had a bit more with Jamie Foxx's. They had a bit of a comical back and forth, I suppose. Still really done quick, but I completely agree with you, and I was going to ask you about that. The resolutions of each villain.
And that's where my problem with why the joke scenes were so long with the Spider-Man, and also why it was so long at the start. Is that why you could have had more of those moments?
Yeah.
You could have made them better instead of just... It was literally like, there's a big moment, there's a big moment, there's a big moment, there's a big moment, and done. And they were literally like, well, let's get that out there, get that out there, get that out there, get that out there as quick as we can.
And then
all on the screen, done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a bit of a shame because, like you said, you feel almost like you have them there, it's done. But at the same time, we are nitpicking at that point. You know what I mean? They still did a comedy, but you're like, man, give yourself literally 10 more seconds here.
Yeah,
you've got
and
a complete different atmosphere to this scene.
I feel like that may be a deliberate decision, even though I don't know why they take it. Because they want it to be more of Tom Holland's film.
Maybe.
But, I just wish they'd given more time to those big moments.
Yeah, well, we've summed up. I was going to ask you about those moments, and I'm glad we've summed those moments
Which ones were they?
I was going to ask you the villain resolutions, like with the little things with each villain going to compromise them when they went back.
I like the Doc Ock one.
Yeah, that was nice, and he's like trying to do better, like he did in the old Spider-Man movie. That was a nice little throwback.
I like that one. And also when Tobey got stabbed, and
yeah, I didn't like how they just brushed off that, like, oh yeah, he got stabbed. Well,
is that? Oh, I've been stabbed before. It's fine.
And this next moment leads directly on for that. So Tom Holland goes to kill him. Goes to kill William Dafoe's Green Goblin. Tobey stops him. I was like, you've seen it coming, but that's quite nice. But it shows Tom's got this sinister edge to him now because of what's happened, and he's on his own. And the symbiote's been introduced. Black naughty Spider-Man. Not Black Spider-Man, Venom.
Possibly.
Who knows? But then, after that, you had the little goodbye. The goodbye of the Spider-Man. When he's about to go, he's just confessed to everyone, right, you're going to all forget who I am. That, just for nostalgia, that image of the three of them giving each other a hug. And Tobey and Andrew, your OG heroes, stood there arm in arm. It's just like, man, that is so warm, right?
Yeah, it was lovely. It was just
so nice.
It just reminds you why you wanted to see it.
Facts, literally. And then, to finish us off then, we've already talked about it briefly earlier on, but the moment where Tom decides he's not going to remind Zendaya and Ned who he is, he's going to go on his own. And it's almost very symmetrical to Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, right? Where he's in his own apartment, he's making his own suit, he's got his little police radar that he's sort of made himself.
Yeah.
That full little thing, what did you...
They went for the aesthetic of, like, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man in the really rubbish New York flat.
And did you notice the nod where he was like, oh, rent's due at the first of the month, don't be late? Like, yeah, I did.
And it was it's a sort of thing that Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man had to go through mentally, of whether I want to subject my loved ones to this risk and all these issues. I think it's a very interesting way to go, and I think they've done it pretty well in the way they've gone about it. But it's interesting for the future.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And then, a couple of little things I just wanted to bring up. We've talked about most of our little, I suppose, problems with the movie. And to be fair, I feel like we're being, our problems didn't at all. I mean, for me personally, it didn't necessarily tint or hinder my view. I still had a fantastic time watching this film. I know what I was going into. I was satisfied in every element. I had my frustrations. One thing that will never ever fail to frustrate me about Tom Holland's Spider-Man is the CGI of his suit. I don't know what it is, right? And it's such a little thing. But Tobey Maguire's there. His suit, when there's CGI in him, he looks real. Andrew Garfield looks real. His movement, everything looks real. Tom Holland's suit, especially at that end scene where we have that comic, accurate sort of suit, it genuinely looks like a cartoon. Well, to put that to a moment, just to run it back very quickly here, the moment where Andrew Garfield says, "I love you guys," and we have that little exchange where the 3 Spider-Men run off what are they standing on, the scaffolding, and they all start swinging together, and it's like, wow, this is genuinely like just a Spider-Man fan's dream. And that moment where they all just land there straight away still, it's almost the exact same thing. You just feel like, I know you can't replicate that with live action, right? But it just does feel a little bit, I suppose, flimsy. I suppose maybe a word to look for. Yeah, flimsy is
a good word.
You know what I mean? But it's still, like, once again, the iconicness of that scene where they all land on the head of, I think the head of the Statue of Liberty they land on or something like that, or the flame, and you're just like, yo, there's the 3 Spider-Man right there. They were CGI'd out in the trailer. What a moment, man. But yeah, overall, Moxie, moving forwards with this movie, what was your final take-ins from this film? Because we've been talking about this for a while now, damn.
A damn while.
So what are your final take-ins from this movie, to summarize everything, and where do you see them going forwards? And what would you like to see moving forwards with this? Well, this franchise, Spider-Man as a whole, what do you want?
Well, franchise-wise, I haven't thought about too much for it. But the film as a whole, I think very messy, mixed. However, there were the bits in the middle, say 40 minutes in the middle was amazing. The rest around it, I could take or leave. I had a lot of problems with it, but then I feel like it's more than a film, if you know what I'm saying.
It's an experience, right?
It's not for me to look at it and judge it as a film, because it is just there to be experienced.
Well, it's an event.
It is a nostalgia trip, and people will love it, and I completely get why they love it. But I'm just looking at it from a film perspective. It's not brilliant, but there are moments and like stretches in it that are great. And as a nostalgia trip, as something to please fans and give people what they've wanted to see for a long time, I think it's important this happened. I'm glad I've seen it.
Yeah.
And I think well done for actually pulling it off, because, you know, it couldn't have been easy.
No, definitely not.
And, you know, I can totally get why people think it's the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, you can see that, right?
I can see it, but of course I do have my problems.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And look, I also do have my problems with this film, especially because in my brain this was going to be the best cinematic thing that I'd ever seen. But I will say this. As much as I do have a few problems, there's a few consistent problems I've had with this sort of trilogy of Spider-Man movies. And as much as I do agree that it is definitely not a perfect... I'm seeing a lot of people, like you said, your opinion of things is perfect, fantastic. I can completely understand why. To me, not a perfect movie, but has this encapsulated in my mind more than any other film that I've probably seen. Definitely this year, 100%. Are those problems enough for me to say I didn't love this movie? No, they're not. I've seen it twice now. I have every intention of seeing it again. I just think, for me, as someone who's grown up with these films, I loved it, man. I have my problems, I have my gripes, but I was happy. I was satisfied as anything walking out of that cinema. A bit frustrated with certain things, but not enough to tint my view of this movie. And I think, to me, as a big, like I said, as Spider-Man fan, but Andrew Garfield's particularly, his take of Spider-Man, I was more than satisfied with how they delivered him. I didn't think they did him to even Tobey, you know, like you said, you can argue whether it looked like his performance was great, whatever, but just him being there was just enough for me to be like, this is just such an experience. Moving forwards, I'm very excited to see the direction they take with Tom Holland's trilogy now, because I also think he had a fantastic movie.
To be fair, as much as I didn't like the story they put around it, I didn't think it was particularly well orchestrated. Where they ended up with it, I find it quite interesting.
It's
so
exciting,
I would watch another one, the following films. Yeah.
That's the thing, and see where they end up with it. And also, they may have opened the door up for Spider-Man 4 and Spider-Man 3, man.
I would do anything for Spider-Man 4.
Imagine that.
Oh,
imagine
Lord.
that.
Yeah.
Moxie, that wraps our first ever film review on TLCpod. Shouts out Spider-Man No Way Home. Here we go. That was good, Mox.